I bring you Michelle Miolla, a full-time ceramic artist living in Raleigh, North Carolina, who also teaches at Boone Art Center, where I am actually currently taking a class with her. And she is just an incredibly thoughtful, intentional artist, and I'm really excited to share some of her journey with you. I wanted to quickly start out by reading a small piece from her artist statement just to lay a little bit of a foundation. I came to clay through function. The connection that my work has between myself and the user is an important bond that I keep in mind with every piece that I make. So without further ado, I'm excited to show you some imagery and give you a chance to hear directly from Michelle.
I got my 2-year degree from the community college in Asheville and started to do some work for the Village Potters. After that, at the Village Potters, then I just started doing it like really full time. And I wanted to know more about it, because they were mixing glazes, they were firing gas kilns, and like I didn't know any of that stuff. Like I just played around on the wheel and I was like, look at this cool stuff I can make. So I decided to go to school at App State. So then I decided to go to Boone. I checked out App State's campus and I fell in love with the head of the ceramics department, Lisa Stinson. She's amazing. And we like really clicked. So she was my professor throughout. And I just kind of like got deep into the clay world. And at that point I was waiting tables, going to school. I really like still didn't even think about being a potter like as a career. It was just like, I'm gonna make some stuff and sell it for like $20,
So you weren't thinking about like cost of goods sold.
Yeah, not at all. And I was using, of course, like it costs money to go to school, but I was using all their facilities, like their kilns and glazes and everything. So I was just buying clay, which isn't that much compared to everything else. Yeah, I never wanted to do it full time, actually. So I was still kind of like, I'm just going to wait tables. I'm going to do it part time. Graduated from App State, stuck around Boone for a little bit. I actually had like no intent in leaving Boone either, and working at Appalachian Mountain Brewery, A&B, in Boone. And so I was doing that for like, part-time, and then doing little markets here and there in Boone. And then COVID happened. I got furloughed from A&B for a little bit, went back, was continuing to do the part-time bartending, part-time clay. And then I actually like got pushed out of Boone because of my housing situation. Long story short, because I could get very deep into that. So I couldn't find anywhere else to live in Boone because there's like no housing, let alone if you have animals, if you have a kiln that you need an electrician to install, nobody wanted me to live in their house. So I was just had to leave. I came back to the Raleigh area to live with my parents for a few months while I found somewhere to live.
Asheville's kind of like that too. Hard to find anywhere to live. Everything's super tough. Mm-hmm. So when you were doing craft fairs in Boone right before COVID hit, were you having the experience of, oh my gosh, like I'm really selling a lot and I'm like feeling like, oh, I'm making money at this. Maybe I should consider taking it more seriously? Or what was your experience with that?
Yeah, so that's kind of how that happened because, I had mentioned that when I was in school, I was just selling pieces here and there.
Yeah.
But after I graduated, when I can actually spend more time in the studio, like developing my style, that's when I started seeing like, oh gosh, like I am selling a lot of stuff. Like this is really cool. But I was always strict with myself. Like I do not want to do this full time because I don't want it to be like what I'm depending on for money. I always told myself I was gonna like not love it as much if I did it full time. So it was great because I could still have my other job and then do this part time and sell more and more and more. And it was getting really awesome. And then COVID.
And so then how did you pull out of that? You came back to Raleigh, moved in with your folks for a little while. Mm-hmm. And were you just making all the time at this point and thinking, okay, eventually I'm going to get back out there? Or were you also reaching out to retailers? Like what were you doing in the meantime to maintain momentum and kind of keep things moving?
I was just making, like I didn't want to go back into the serving world because of COVID. Like I was still really like, stand off with that. I didn't want to be with the public. So I was just like, okay, here we are. This is something that I do love to do. This is a skill that I have. Let's just see what happens. And my good friend, Mary Parker, I don't know if you follow her on Instagram, but she went to App State with me and she lives in Raleigh. She was here when I moved back. And so she started doing these pop-ups at her house. I guess I'm going to do this full time because I don't really know what else to do, and again, like I said, I didn't want to really go and work with the public again, serving people. So yeah, that just kind of took off.
That's great. So you started doing these pop-ups, and then were you also getting your work into stores? Like, what does that trajectory look like from I guess I'm doing this full time to really doing, more shows and things, and then getting to a point where you are now sustaining yourself with it?
Yes. So I got a couple people reached out to me on Instagram. Somebody from Philadelphia, and she reached out to me. She was opening up a store called Ceramic Concept, and she asked if she could buy a bunch of earrings from me. She has been buying like 75 pairs at a time, 50 pairs at a time, just like ordering every couple months, and so that was huge. And then a place in Boone called Hatchet Coffee, I'm friends with them. They asked to do the same thing, so I started selling like large quantities there. And I also got another reach out from Pine State Flowers to do some vases. So it's just like things like that, like they actually kind of like just popped into my world. Like I wasn't, again, like I didn't expect to be doing this full time. So like it might sound silly, but I didn't really think to like reach out to retailers. And like for some reason, the universe just did it for me. I'm incredibly thankful and grateful for that because like, again, like I said, like I didn't know what I was doing. It just kind of happened.
Well, and there's so much involved with that outreach. One of the things that I've worked with makers on in the past is creating sales sheets, like developing those prospect lists, like going out and finding partnerships and retailers to develop those long-term, like wholesale or or consignment relationships. But I think that part of what has started really working for people, and sounds like it did for you, is the idea that I'm going to do this thing that I love. I'm going to share about it, be vulnerable, put it out there, because if you don't put it out there, you're not going to be found,
Right.
whether you're prospecting or not. And then I think people have become more mindful in just taking time to really think about what kind of things they want to curate for their shops. So as opposed to going online to something like Etsy and just kind of scrolling through and saying, oh, this will work, this will work, this will work, just being more intentional and actually concepting, oh yeah, like we want this kind of product and this person could potentially customize it for us. So I think like in general, the maker community has it's like more people feel like they're a part of it and feel comfortable to reach out and really engage, which is huge because it used to be so much more kind of exclusionary.
Yeah, exactly. And like Instagram, for all of its faults that it has, it's just been like amazing and this great like platform for us to connect, in the maker community. And the seller of like the retailer who's selling all of our work, like unbelievable.
Well, how does it feel now that you're doing this full time, and what does that look like? Are you doing more fairs than you were before? And like, do you ever find yourself feeling a little burnt out or lacking inspiration? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, the burnt out thing is very real. Wow, it's a lot. So yeah, and especially now that like it's market season, the weather's getting nice. So Artsplosure was the biggest market that I'd ever done. It's a 2-day market. There was hundreds of vendors. It was huge. It was really great, but getting ready for that market, I worked every single day for like 3 months straight, like without a day off. Like not at all day off. And it was like I was working at least 8 hours a day, and it just like it gets to be a lot. And like the actual making part where I'm like making the clay pieces, making the pots, the jewelry, that's like 25% of what I do, you know, because it's then like you got to load the kiln, you got to, you know, do all this marketing on Instagram, take all these pictures. It's just like so much extra stuff, you know, and also like the time spent thinking about what you're going to do, like you said, like inspiration, you know, it's like a lot of times people think, you know, when they're paying for a mug that's $50, you know, mine range from like 40, 45, $50 around there. Like they look at that and they're like, well, it's just a mug, you know, like I can buy a mug from Walmart or Target for less than $10. But it's like the time spent, especially because I hand build, I don't use the wheel. So hand building is specifically like way longer than doing it on the wheel. Not to like diminish that process at all.
Oh, no. I think it's different for everybody. I'm more of a like a maker, like I like using my hands in that way. I took a wheel class recently and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to just do things the longer way because my brain doesn't compute.
It's a lot. It truly is. It's like not only are you're doing like a craft and you're being, you know, like creative, but you're also having to work with this machine that's really, really fast, like so fast paced. And if you make like one little mistake, like you got to start over. And that just like wasn't for me. I'm a very slow person and I'm very methodical, and I like to like just get in the zone and kind of like meditate when I'm working, as cheesy as that sounds. But the wheel is just, too much. I did the wheel for the first like 2 or 3 years that I was making, and like I have a wheel and I was just like set on doing wheel work, but now I'm strictly hand built. And also like you get to make cool organic shapes. It's a lot, and I didn't think it was going to be this much, you know. It's like there's always that perception of, you know, artists are just like lazy and they just, I don't know, do things for fun. But it's like, yeah, sure, it's a very, very fun job and I love it so much. And I'd much rather be doing this than like being an accountant or literally anything else. So I don't want to make it sound like horrible, but it's a lot.
Well, it's the thing that I found when I was doing this full time that was so difficult was this perception that people had, but oh my gosh, how cool that you just did like get to make jewelry all day. And something you stood out that you said stood out about the amount of time spent thinking.
Yes.
You know, in any other profession, people are expected to spend time on professional development, kind of filling their cup, so to speak, by doing research, keeping up with, you know, the news, the trends, all the things. I mean, whether you're doing something more creative or more scientific, there's a lot of time spent thinking, unless you're doing something purely mechanical, where you are, you know, doing the same rote thing over and over again. And for some reason that effort is diminished in a profession that requires so much darn creativity. It's like, I don't understand how that computation doesn't add up for folks.
Right.
And it really is, you know, it was like, you're right. Absolutely. There was the time spent making the things, which some of it did become very meditative because it was either required a lot of thought or is a lot of like repeat movements. But all the time spent then switching from that brain to the sales and marketing brain, it's really exhausting. And I mean, even when you're not working, you're working because there's no way to clock out. And yeah, we were talking a little bit before this about the whole pricing part of it. And like you were just saying, you know, well, I could buy a mug for $10. Well, that argument is so weird to me. It's so weird to me because I could go to any shoe store. I could go to Gucci, right? And be like, I could buy a purse for $10. Right. They're going to be like, okay.
Right. Go buy that purse for $10. Like,
we live in a society where we have lots of different options and anybody can choose to pay more or less for an object. If all you're looking for is functionality, right? But that's not what handmade.
Yeah. And it does take that time to think about like like sure, maybe it takes a couple hours to make that one mug, but it's like the time that it takes to think about what you want to do, unless you want to make the same exact thing over and over and over again, carbon copy, that's the only thing you make.
Yep.
It's like, how are you supposed to keep up and have all these different ideas? You have to sketch. I go on walks and like get inspiration from nature, and it's just, there are all these little things that go into it that nobody sees when they see the mug. They're like, oh, this is just some cool thing, right?
Yeah, and all the education too.
Yes.
Just like any other profession, education is part of it, whether you're self-taught and you spend months and hours and years toiling away, self-teaching yourself, or you're going to a classroom and you're paying money. All of that it's so important and it's super valuable.
Truly it is. And like, I learned so much when I went to school too. Like I have so much respect for people who are self-taught, because for me, everybody's brain works differently. Mine, like sometimes I need a little bit of a little push, like, hey, I'm gonna help you. Like I need that. So like going to college for art was really helpful, because your professors ask you these questions you never thought to ask yourself, or I didn't at least, and so like all of that time, like just, it really makes a difference.
I couldn't agree more. I was self-taught for the most part. Well, really for all of the part. up until I burned out after, almost 15 years of craft fairs and teaching and doing all these different things around my craft. And I've taken almost 2 years off now, and I'm just getting back into a place kind of play. And for the first time ever, I'm taking workshops taught by other people. And it's been amazing, because I took a wheel pottery class recently, and you're exactly right. The questions that the instructor asked me led me to answers I didn't know I needed. And that's just so valuable. And also the sort of cross-pollination of, okay, I'm working with a material I've never worked with before, and now I'm having like all these ideas for solutions that I used to need when I was making this totally other kind of work. So it's really cool what can happen when you're out there, taking the time, but that takes time away from the work.
Yes, I know. So much, so many things in every different area. And it's just perspective too, like you're saying, like finding answers to things you didn't even know you had questions to.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you're doing a lot of craft fairs. I always thought if people are coming to craft fairs to shop, then they must have some sort of awareness of craft, right? And all different kinds of people show up to craft fairs. So like, have you experienced frustrating conversations or experienced any obstacles between like perception and value and all of that with your work?
Yeah, so actually most recently I had somebody ask me, and like I'm trying to see it from their perspective, but just like asking like, oh, if I buy 2 things, like can I get a discount? And it's like, I want to look at it in someone else's mind and like try not to get offended by it, like, because oftentimes you buy, I don't know, you'll go on a website and they'd say like free shipping after a certain amount of money, and I'm like I'm not a big box store. It's like, do you want to get paid less than what your salary is? Like it's just, like, what if I turned the table and said like, hey, do you want to work for 3 hours but only get paid for 1? That's how I think of it. Like, no, I'm sorry, those 2 things, like I'm not even charging what I should charge to give myself a appropriate hourly rate. Like I don't, if it's hard, I'm trying not to look at it hourly, because like I'm gonna kill myself if I try to do that math and see how little I really truly make an hour. But just to be like, to ask that question. So I was like, no, I'm sorry, I don't give a discount. Like, I don't know what you're trying to do, save $5, like makes a big difference to me. I'm very sorry. And I'm also paying taxes too.
Yeah, exactly. I had sort of an awakening recently. So when I was doing craft fairs, I did give discounts. I would, if you buy this many items or you spend this much money, I'd give something.
Yeah.
And I had this obsession with meeting a certain number or getting rid of a certain number of objects. Like, this is what success will feel like to me. Yeah. And I was really caught up in just trying to survive, so
totally.
Like, I burned out. I took a break, and I marketing is my full-time thing, and I do a lot of consulting and contract work. And a couple years ago, I got hooked up with a consultant who was contracting some work out to me. And she said, I want you to put a scope together, tell me how much it'll cost, every month. And then also all in, what is the client looking for? And I put this elaborate scope together that involved all these different discount opportunities. Like, if they commit to 6 months, then I give this much off, and basically not realizing I was operating from this place of fear of, like, if I don't give something away, then no one will want me. She received my email and she wrote back, just tell me don't worry about discounts. Just tell me what the work costs, and like, that'll be all good.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. I realized I kind of told on myself in a way. Like, I made myself seem really inexperienced, even though I've been working in marketing for over 10 years. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I consult with people all the time, but I was just so used to that mentality of, like, having to give something away because of the questions that people would ask me all the time at craft fairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to offer this extra thing.
Yes. Like, what you have to offer on its own isn't valuable enough unless I feel like I'm getting a deal somehow.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it hurt my spirit, I gotta tell you, but I'm recovering.
Yeah. Good. That's all that matters. Growth.
Yeah, but I'm so glad to hear that you don't give in to requests like that, because it can be really hard in the moment to say no.
Yeah. And like, sometimes I do, like with earrings, I'll do like, they're $30, but if you buy 2, it'll be $55. But that's if, like, I've had certain objects for a long time. Like I have a discount shelf of mugs that either like have imperfections, or if I've had them for a while and they haven't sold at past markets. But like things that are just fresh out of the kiln and new, like, I'm not gonna give a discount for. And you know what? And those things, they didn't buy those things, and someone else bought them at full price. So
there you go.
There we go. Nothing personal. I just need to support myself,
Yeah, exactly. And if they need a $10 mug, Target is down the road. Along the way, anything that you feel like you picked up that you would impart to other makers who are either intentionally or unintentionally finding themselves moving into more of a full-time maker life.
Yeah. So it's hard to say, because I didn't like intentionally do this full time. But some things that I wish I would have like paid attention to are like the seeking out different retailers for accounts to do like consignment, wholesale. I'm actually going to work on that too, because I want to pick up more accounts, but like, it's just not clicking in my brain. I'm not that type of person. So I got to learn to be that type of person. So yeah, like maybe looking at things from the marketing point of view, because I have like no experience whatsoever. And I feel like my business could grow a lot if I pay attention to that, which I need to start doing. And also just like really, really giving yourself grace, because it's really hard. And especially when you're looking at your work from a standpoint of like, this has to sell for me to pay my rent. Like, it puts that like extra stress on every single piece that you make has to be perfect. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for you to experiment or to explore different things. Trying your best while still supporting yourself to explore and like be okay with things if they don't turn out perfect. Like, what I do is I offer those at a discount, those pieces, so
Yeah.
that I can still say like, hey, I was exploring with this. It didn't look exactly how I wanted to, but I can still sell it. And then I can keep in my mind that I get to still experiment and grow, because you need to grow as an artist, as a maker, or else your work gets stagnant. That's when you get like really bored with your work. So yeah, and just giving yourself grace, and you're not always going to make your goal amount of money every single market. Some months are going to be really, really bad. And
yeah,
really bad. Like January, wow, barely made any money in January. But the summer months, that's where it's at.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I talk to folks about a lot is the idea that there's so much pressure to go full time. It's like the moment a maker starts selling something, people start asking questions like, well, what's your next step? Are you trying to get into stores? Do you want to open your own store? And suddenly, so now full time is right for some people. It seems like it's right for you, but for other people, it's like, hey, there's nothing wrong with intentionally deciding to keep this a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes people find themselves in the position of, oh my gosh, now I'm chasing my tail trying to keep up with this thing that maybe isn't right for me. I always encourage folks out there to ask, because I personally really like having the security of more than one revenue stream in my life.
Yeah, and that's something I forgot to mention too. I do teach classes at Poland. So I do 2 days a week, 2 classes a week. So it's like some sort of money that's a little stable. And it's really nice to like get out there and meet people.
So I have a question about consignment versus wholesale.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have feelings?
I do, yes. So when I first started like dipping my toe into selling, I did consignment because that was just exciting to me to get my work into places. But now that I am more relying as this is my only form of income, I only do wholesale, just because it's like I can't just crank out a bunch of stuff, hand it over, and hope that it sells. So yeah, so I do wholesale with earrings because those are like a little quicker to make, but like bigger things, unless the store is willing to do a larger cut, because typically with wholesale people say 50-50. I can't do that with bigger items because, like I said before, I don't even like charge enough for a piece to like actually pay myself. Some places are just like, yeah, we'll give you more of a percentage. That's cool, but it's just like, that's a conversation that you have to be willing to have with somebody, and be upfront about it. Because 50-50 is kind of a large cut.
Yeah,
Like I get it, but
yeah, it's tough on items that you have so much, like what you make, there's so much labor involved. It's difficult. If you were to make your wholesale price really profitable, the amount that it maybe quote should be, then doubling it would be kind of pricing yourself out of the market. So it's
exactly
kind of a weird balance. I also started out doing consignment and quickly realized that for many reasons, I think the model is kind of flawed because I ended up, so I had a gallery when I lived in Knoxville, and I did a lot of wholesale with folks, and I did some consignment, especially if they were like pop-ups and things like that.
Yeah.
But I found, even with myself, I've got so much more stake in the game if I've purchased inventory. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
And so I think it helps everybody be more professional when that investment is, shared on both parts. So
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it works for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends what you do, how fast you can do it, or like, it just all depends.
Yeah. And I think too, with makers who are able to use tools like 3D printers and things where they're able to like manufacture pieces and parts of their designs.
Yes.
I would probably be much more open to something like consignment in that case, because not every single part is hand built, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's a big factor, is like whether it's something that can be made like outsourced, you know, like rather than you
Yeah.
just sitting there like hand sewing something or
Yes.
you know, hand building something. Like, my God, it's so many hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if there's one thing you could say to, you know, a future customer, and then also to makers out there who are, you know, embarking on building their businesses, you can say whatever's on your mind, really.
Yeah.
Or if neither of those and you want to say something totally different, just whatever you want. Just anything.
So to a future customer, I just like the appreciation, you know, like I know I said that I had that negative encounter with somebody at Artsplosure, but there was like only 2 negative encounters. The majority of the people like coming, oh my God, they're so friendly, so nice. Like one person paid me more because they were like,
Wow.
you're probably underselling yourself, so here's more money. And it's like I like literally teared up. I was like, thank you.
That's so sweet.
So just like to any future customer, like just thank you so much. And just the appreciation is big, it's huge. And I seriously like wouldn't be able to do this if people didn't buy things from me. And it's just so it's more than just somebody buying something and like giving me money, you know, like that's great, that's going to help me pay my bills, but it's so great to know that this person is going to choose this mug to drink out of, or put on a pair of earrings to make them look good, to make them feel better. So just so much appreciation. I think that's really it.
Well, thank you again, Michelle. And I am looking forward to sharing this with everyone.
Thank you so much. I truly do appreciate it.
That's been awesome. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Down in the